Good evening, everyone. I'm Latasha Starr, and my colleague Kelvin Shorts and I, with the support of one of our PhD advisors, Marie Vans, will present to you the Interactive Aviation Maintenance Classroom. Kelvin will start with the introduction, the agenda, and he'll tell you a few facts about how our virtual classroom came to be as it relates to aviation maintenance and the aviation world in general. I'll pick up with more of the intricate design of the actual virtual classroom and results from a qualitative study where students were able to interact with our classroom and provide their feedback on how it can be improved. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Kelvin and we'll get started.
All right, thank you, Tasha. Yes, like she said, I'll go over the introduction. So if we can go to the next slide. So before we get started, just kind of wanted to give a small background on aviation maintenance technicians training. So currently in the United States, to become a certified aviation maintenance technician, there's lots of classroom training, videos, printed manuals, and lots of on-the-job training. There's also the FAA has lots of requirements. They have to pass a written test, an oral test, and practical test to show the hands-on ability of each aviation maintenance technician before they are certified. The experience that's required, hands-on experience that's required, there's a minimum of 18 months of appropriate experience for each rating that you have, and if you have multiple ratings, 30 months of concurrent experience is required to be certified in multiple ratings. Some of the challenges that we're currently seeing in aviation maintenance technician training is there's lots of documentation with frequent updates. There's quite a bit of a shortage in qualified personnel. I would reference you back to what's going on with Boeing right now, with everything changing, and there's lots of advancements in technology and equipment that is currently driving a huge demand for more aviation maintenance technicians. We'll go to the next slide. All right, so here I just want to talk about some of the generational differences that we have seen in the United States as it relates to training. So every year in the United States, several AMT schools and military training facilities are up with training thousands of new students in aviation maintenance technician training. However, many of those trainees that we're seeing are under 25 years of age. Many of those students have different generational differences from their instructors, from their leadership. So with that, we have to kind of look at a different way of instruction and teaching the students that we have here on the slide. Have for example the generation C 1997 through 2012 that they traditionally learned by the A model. So there's four here. The first one, active, means the instructor is engaged with the student for a high level of interaction. Awareness, where the student does a self-assessment, and that assessment is evaluated by the instructor. I'm sorry. They anticipate the use to illustrate some theoretical concepts that are encountered in life and around their work. And the last is associate. They would assist learners in remembering what they already know about current concepts or current experiences that they might have in their life. So the motivation of the interactive aviation maintenance classroom is we wanted to understand the how AMTs train and learn and maintain their currency requirements And we also wanted to, bottom line, we wanted to evaluate whether aviation maintenance instructions can be enhanced by including a VR or a 3D virtual environment to enhance the training to help to the students to with better retention of the instructional material that is currently being received. So for the contributions to the industry that we believe our interactive aviation maintenance classroom brings, it encourages more collaboration and a fostering of learning through common virtual environment. It can be a little bit more motivating for the students in a traditional classroom due to the VR interactions. It doesn't seem so serious. It's something that most people are used to these days, and it can be adaptable. It can be tailored. Every student can have a different experience, a different platform, a different area of the aircraft where they're training for their maintenance certifications. With that, for the next slide, I'll pass it back over to my partner so she could take you through the actual prototype that we developed.
Okay, thank you, Kelvin. So one of the big things we wanted to do was not just develop another VR platform. We wanted to make sure that this VR platform was rooted in some type of urgent and emerging need, which just so happened to be aviation maintenance, which is kind of what Kelvin just explained, why we need aviation maintenance, the deficit of maintainers that we have that are trained and current versus those that are deployed in the field. And what is that gap? What was keeping the level of aviation maintainers from being able to go and do the things that they needed to do to keep the aircraft in use? And we realized that it had a lot to do with certifications. It had a lot to do with meeting certain classroom requirements. And there was a shortage of trainers or a shortage of class offerings. So this virtual classroom model is really kind of how that was birthed. And in order to take a need like having virtual classrooms for aviation maintenance purposes, combined with this intense research behind a system engineering approach, which we're both pursuing our doctoral degrees in system engineering, and then myself as a professor looking at how students could learn and how this classroom could meet their needs from an educational psychology perspective. So just kind of wanted to set the stage as to kind of how this became the bona fide prototype that it is. So looking at the 74 engineering students who qualitatively assess this virtual classroom, we wanted them to go through it, tell us how you felt going through this virtual classroom. What was it like to complete a quiz in a virtual setting? What was it like to collaborate with other students in a virtual setting? And so we had them each design their own avatar so they can kind of buy into the experience. And then as they maneuvered through the classroom, we wanted to give them educational learning opportunities at 3 different distinct stages of the environment. And I'll go into what those 3 stages are and kind of tell you the results of this experiment. So really, the results, and the reason I'm telling you these results ahead of time is because, again, I want to set the stage as I walk through the design, that these results were qualitative in nature. So again, we weren't trying to, from a quantitative perspective, measure, okay, if they took a test or learned a concept in a non-traditional setting and then compared it to a virtual setting, what were the test scores better? We didn't do that quantitative analysis. That will come as part of our future work, but we really focused on how the student felt as they were maneuvering through this virtual reality when compared to their traditional setting. Now, I must set the stage and say that a lot of these students had yet to experience virtual reality in any other platform. So this was new to them. They were kind of afraid of it. They were kind of nervous about, well, where do I go and how do I navigate? And so a lot of those barriers had to be overcome before we could even get the student to fully indulge. So that's one thing to know. And so when you look at these results in terms of students saying they prefer more of a traditional classroom, that's all they knew. So we were kind of shocked because we're in the age of virtual reality and different VR glasses, and we're just in technology and iPhones. So we really thought the students would prefer a VR environment, but to our shock, we learned that these particular students preferred a traditional classroom. And again, the reason we think that is because they're so used to having a traditional classroom without that VR technology, which kind of inspired me as a professor to maybe integrate that more. But also because there was you have to keep in mind the platform we use, which I'll tell you in a minute, was just a free platform. It was just a platform that, we didn't sign up for or pay any additional money. So it was very basic in nature. We feel like there was definitely some performance issues. Students kept getting kicked out of the platform. There were some resolution issues. There were times where things were kind of blurry. So we feel like if we do have the opportunity to do this experiment again, we would probably buy into more sophisticated software to enhance the experience of the students. So here's the link. We just used Mozilla Hubs. We wanted to just, again, use something that was free, something that seemed pretty simple for the novice user, and we allowed them to walk through this classroom. So imagine you're the student. Here's your link. It would take you to this initial screen where it'll ask you to join the room. And as you join the room, you got to pick your avatar and you got to kind of display your name. So again, students, we wanted them to kind of buy into this experience and really feel some ownership as they emerge into the VR space. They did set their microphones up if they had the option to, so they could talk to their friends. So we wanted to, again, create a community around learning. And we thought that was a good approach to welcoming them into this environment. So as soon as they walked into the lobby of this classroom, they were able to kind of get instructions on what they would do. And again, when we think about an aviation maintainer who's maybe new to the virtual reality experience as well, we want them right up front when they first go into the classroom to see what it is we expect of you while you're in this space. What are the objectives? What are the outcomes? What do we hope you learn from having this aviation maintenance training experience in a virtual space? So those instructions are right up front in the lobby area to give each user an opportunity to truly take a moment to digest what they're about to walk into. As they navigate down the hall, they would take on 3 issues that are common to aviation maintenance. So they would go and explore what a performance issue on the aircraft would look like. And what was great about the VR space is that not only are they having maybe traditional PowerPoint slides embedded into the walls of the room, but they're able to interact in a 3D way with parts from the actual aircraft that had the biggest performance issues or the most often were considered broken or faulty parts. And so that was really neat for them to interact with this material in a 3D space that kind of allowed the parts to come to life, but also in a traditional format with the PowerPoint screens on the wall that kind of took them through either a video or just PowerPoint slides on the topic that they may have been more familiar with. So we kind of saw the merging of 2 concepts within one, which was really nice. So performance issues, broken parts, broken aircraft parts, and aircraft system failure. I will also note that in each of these rooms, after the lesson was taught in those various modalities that I just explained, they were then able to take a quiz on the topic that they just covered before going to a new topic. So we were trying to see if they were able to retain some of the information and how they felt about that information that they were learning. Is there a question? I can't hear if there's a question. Okay,
Not
so
yet, please carry on.
here's what inside the classroom looked like. We set up kind of chairs and desks, something that they would be quite familiar with in a real classroom setting. And then again, as you can see on the walls, it was more of an interactive graphic where they could see the different parts and they can kind of interact and kind of touch the parts and then have additional information on each of those parts show up. And it really just kind of consumed them as they were able to look in a 360 view of different parts related to the topic that they were exploring. All right, so I kind of talked about some of the future plans as I wrap up here. I did kind of delve into how we hope to work on the development of maybe a virtual classroom in a space or a VR platform that's more reliable, one that's better supported so we don't have a lot of the technical issues that we had, and hopefully that will provide a better experience for the students. But we also hope to cover more topics. We also hope to add a quantitative perspective where we're able to really assess what they learn in that VR space compared to what they learn outside the VR space. And I think I have wrapped up in just enough time to get some questions and answers in.
Okay, wonderful. So let's give a good round of applause.